Hi, I'm Droolbatz. It's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2018 movie Bird Box. I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally, how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. Mallory is getting ready to have a baby. She seems to be a bit hesitant about it because she's had some kind of emotional stuff in her past that makes her a little bit concerned about being a good mother and having connections to people. As she and her sister are getting prepared for this baby, a strange phenomenon happens. There's a lot of outbreak of people just randomly committing suicide. It's not certain what this phenomenon is, but as Mallory and her sister are getting ready for stuff, they literally see people in the street start bashing their heads against walls, jumping out in front of cars, just crazily. But Mallory's sister, while she is driving her back from the doctor's office, her eyes suddenly change and she tries to crash their car. It's pretty clear that whatever is happening and causing people to do this to themselves is contagious, and so people are trying to lock themselves in their houses and escape. Mallory gets locked in this house with some people who take pity on her. They realize that whatever it is, it kind of gets in your eyes and changes your brain chemistry a little bit and makes you commit suicide. Mallory eventually has to leave when she has her baby, and a crazy guy breaks into the house and opens all the blinds so that people can see the enlightened whatever it is. I'm not really sure what he's seeing, and Mallory escapes with her baby and the baby of another woman who was in the house with her. How can you possibly navigate the natural world when this invisible creature can cross in front of your eyes and make you go crazy? How can Mallory protect these children? And how can Mallory open herself up emotionally to interacting with people in this really strange time? Watch this review to find out. Bird Box is a Netflix original, and it had the high production value one would expect of a movie group with such a budget. There was a lot of effective CGI use that looked higher budget. There was a lot of star power with recognizable faces that made it have a really professional quality to it, and there was a lot of shot variety, so visually it wasn't a boring or stagnant movie. The movie used a lot of heavy flashbacks, so you're kind of thrown into the movie and the world is slowly revealed as you go along. This made for a really interesting experience that kind of kept the movie from getting stale. The set was really rich. They utilized a lot of scenery. At various points, Mallory and the kids are like traveling down a river, they're out in the woods, and you really got a feel for how expansive the world was. When they were in the city before the children were born, you got to see the inside of the house, you got to see the hospital that Mallory and her sister were visiting, you got to see the streets, you got to see a grocery store, so it really felt like they utilized the settings for this story. I will say that when they were in the house, originally, before the kids were born, it felt a little bit stagnant just because they kept the blinds drawn, so it was really dark in there, but ultimately the movie really utilized its set, and its set felt very rich, and that was a satisfying visual element as well. As far as pacing goes, it wasn't a super fast-paced movie, but everything felt very deliberate, and as a result, it was just a solid feel. Not the fastest pace, but it did clip along at a consistent rate. Bird Box is kind of an intuitive movie. It uses a lot of symbolism. I don't think it was too cloudy. I think it was a fairly obvious theme, so this is kind of more of like an intellectual type monster movie rather than just like a slash 'em and hack 'em type monster movie. But I think many people will enjoy it. It really had high production value, and the editing was just very solid, and everything in the movie felt quite deliberate. Now I am going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of this genre. I will be spoiling this movie, so if you don't want any spoilers, I thank you for staying, but you should leave now. Thank you to everyone else who is sticking around. So Mallory escapes this house where the creatures or whatever they are, these invisible entities, get in. She escapes with the two babies and one other guy. They manage to kind of get out to the wilderness and kind of hop from like wilderness cabin to cabin, eating the food stores that are out there. They manage to make a life for themselves with the kids. This goes on for about 5 years. Mallory refuses to name the children. The one she gave birth to is a boy, and the other one is a girl, and she calls them boy and girl. The man that she's with, who's kind of her lover now, is kind of critical of Mallory for not giving them names. He says that she's very cold to the children and they do need nurturing, even though this is kind of arguably a post-apocalyptic world. This goes with the theme that Mallory struggles to connect with people, and as the movie goes on, she has to like find that connection to escape from the monsters. Anyway, Tom is killed when some people come in and try to expose them to like, you need to see what this creature is, blah blah blah. And Mallory escapes with the kids. They wear blindfolds so that whatever it is, they can't see them. They wear these blindfolds whenever they're outside, and Mallory ties like a rope between her and the kids so that if they get lost, she can just yank them. They have these birds that they keep in this box because the birds seem to be able to tell when these entities are nearby. I think it's because scientifically birds can see light frequencies that we can't, so like theoretically birds can see colors that we can't, so I think the birds are able to see what the humans are not able to see, and it's kind of like the whole canary in a coal mine thing. So Mallory and the kids keep these little birds in this shoebox, and the birds will like start chirping when whatever it is around. Mallory almost loses the kids at one point, but she is able to get them to this safe spot that she heard about on like a radio frequency. It's a school for the blind. I'm not sure why it's in the wilderness, but all the blind people there are safe, and they offer safe haven for her and the kids. And Mallory names the children when she gets there, and it seems for now that they have some hope, and the movie ends. Right off the bat, the whole surviving in a world with mysterious monsters that we don't really understand surrounding one of the main human senses really reminds me of A Quiet Place, which came out earlier this year. Now, A Quiet Place, of course, is different. The monsters hunt by sound rather than the monsters infiltrate you by seeing. But even so, in A Quiet Place, they have to be really quiet. They can't speak, they can't do anything like that. And they kind of survive by like trying to soundproof everything. Whereas in this movie, they can't allow themselves to see this invisible monster, so they have to blindfold themselves and learn how to do things by hand. They have to learn like how to get by feeling and things like that. It really reminded me of A Quiet Place, I think mainly because A Quiet Place came out earlier this year. I think if it weren't so fresh in my mind, and perhaps other audience members' mind, the comparison wouldn't be quite as strong, but it definitely is a very strong comparison. In A Quiet Place, the family, who is the focus of everything, is a very tight-knit family. They're very close, and they're focusing on protecting each other, while as Mallory, she didn't even know if she wanted kids. She doesn't really trust people. She's kind of harsh with the kids and keeps some distance between them and herself. And while it does, I think, make her seem slightly less likable, I think she's likable enough, and I mean, it's understandable considering the world is completely changed. Of course, she'd be a little bit not as warm in that world, but I think it makes her a more interesting character, and I think Mallory's character is kind of what makes this movie more interesting than the concept alone. As far as the monsters go, there have been a lot of movies I've seen recently, including A Quiet Place and Stephanie, just to name a few, where monsters come out of nowhere, nobody knows where they come from, and they terrorize people and kind of change the way that society is. In some cases, like in Stephanie and Bird Box, the monsters are invisible. In this movie, they used blindfolds to keep themselves from accidentally laying eyes on this supposedly invisible entity. I'm not sure if it was multiple entities or just one or whatever, but they used the blindfolds, and it made me personally come up with a lot of theories like what this monster could be. For example, I was like, oh, is this like the Medusa complex where like the second that they look at it, they like immediately go insane? Or is it like they lay eyes on this creature, it allows them to see it, and they like die of fright? Like, what could it be? Unfortunately, this movie didn't give us a solid explanation of what they were. Sometimes I think that's okay. In this case, it was ambiguous, and I personally didn't quite see that it was completely free of flaws. For example, people who come from an insane asylum or have some kind of mental illness, I don't know if they're like psychotic or what to begin with, but they don't have normal brains. These people, when they saw these creatures, rather than immediately committing suicide, they go around and like they're able to live somehow, and they just go around and like try to like make other people see it and go crazy. I thought that was a cool concept, but I didn't really get it. There were a couple of people who like saw it, and instead of committing suicide, they like became these crazy people, and I wasn't sure if it was supposed to imply that they were mentally off to begin with and we just didn't know about it, or like if it was kind of random selection with these creatures or what. That made the movie interesting, but it also gave it kind of a Walking Dead feel, and that not all the humans were on the same page, and that basically it was humans against monster, but also humans against other humans. And that's okay in small doses. I kind of found that a little bit tedious and not necessary to the plot. I'm here for a monster movie, not an apocalypse movie, but whatever. I think the way that this movie might have suffered in comparison to A Quiet Place is mainly simply the fact that A Quiet Place came out a little bit before Bird Box, and Bird Box came out in such close proximity to A Quiet Place. I think if they'd been like 1 or 2 years apart, or like even just 1 year apart, the comparison might not have been so strong. They're only technically a couple of months apart, I think. I saw A Quiet Place in May, and I saw Bird Box in December, so that's like, what, like 7 months? So I mean, that's kind of fresh in my mind just because A Quiet Place was really hyped up. I think if maybe A Quiet Place had been like an indie movie and it hadn't been as advertised, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But I think a lot of people will definitely draw comparisons between A Quiet Place and Bird Box. I also think that because A Quiet Place had such a solid concept, the rules were pretty clear. If the monsters hear you, they're probably going to come hunt you, so just don't make noise. There wasn't a lot of unnecessary complexities like, oh, you know, some people get hunted by the monsters and some don't, type of thing, the way Bird Box had made A Quiet Place just straight up more filled with tension, and because the audience kind of knew the rules a little bit more, it was, I think, easier to enjoy and just really get into it. With Bird Box, I was into it at some points, and at some points I got kind of bored and I was like playing Sudoku or whatever in the background. Altogether though, I think that the way Mallory's character was written was really interesting. I found her character to be quite fascinating, and I actually really liked how they did that and added that into the movie, and I thought it made the movie stand out a little bit. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I personally did not love the movie, but I did like it. It's a high quality film, and I think many people will enjoy it. It's a fairly creative concept, the editing was really good, and the movie felt very deliberate. It was arguably an intelligent movie, and it's also a monster movie. What's there not to love? Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment if you have anything to say. Do you like this movie? Do you think A Quiet Place is better? Do you see the comparison, or do you think that it's totally different? Let me know what you have to say. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.